consent not necessarily based on promise to marry, where physical relationship continues for a substantial period of time. Today, we are discussing a significant Delhi High Court judgment that clarifies that when consent in a physical relationship cannot be deemed as obtained solely based on promise to marry, the Delhi High Court has made an important ruling here about relationships and consent. In simple terms, if I tell you, the court said that if two adults have a physical relationship that continues for a long time, that means several months or more, then it can't be automatically assumed that women's consent was based only on a promise of marriage. Right? The case is of Shivam Pandey versus the state. It's a criminal appeal which has been decided on February 13th, 2025, where the Delhi High Court set aside a conviction under Section 366 and 376 of the IPC. The additional session judge at the Dwarka courts had convicted the appellant here for the offences under Section 366 and 376 on September 13th, 2023, in which he sentenced him to 10 years of rigorous imprisonment. Right. The appellant filed his appeal in the Delhi High Court seeking to set aside this conviction, arguing that the case involved consensual physical relations based on love and affection of both the parties with no criminality involved here. He contended that the trial court failed to appreciate that there was no physical relations between him and the prosecutrix on alleged promise of marriage, but rather than she accompanied him out of her own free will. If I tell you the brief fact here, the appellant here and the prosecutrix, they had known each other since school days. They began meeting in June 18 after completing class 12th. In March 19, they first established their physical relations at a hotel after the appellant promised to marry the prosecutrix. Their relationship continued till November 19 when they both eloped and stay at somewhere for 9 to 10 days. The prosecutrix had admitted in her testimony that she knew marriage would be difficult due to caste differences. Notably, she had once consumed poison also, when her father objected to her relationship with the appellant, indicating the depth of her attachment beyond the promise. So the provisions, which were the key legal provisions which were in this case, were the court examined two crucial provisions, that is section 375 and section 90. 375 defines rape as a sexual act under specific circumstances, including when consent is obtained under misconception of fact. And section 90 here, which clarifies that consent given under misconception of facts is not valid consent if the person obtaining it knows that consent was given due to such misconception. Right. The prosecutrix father testified that he came to know that the accused and the prosecutrix were willing to marry here, right, to each other. The acknowledgement of mutual willingness rather than one-sided deception was crucial in the court's reasoning here. The court relied on many established precedents also of the Supreme Court of India that distinguish between two things, that is a false promise to marry and breach of promise to marry. The false promise to marry means that it is made from the beginning with no intention to fulfill, which is used solely to obtain consent for physical relationships. And a breach of promise to marry means when the promise was genuine but could not be fulfilled due to unforeseen circumstances. In the case of Deepak Gulati versus State of Haryana, the Supreme Court observed that there may be a case where a prosecutrix agrees to have sexual intercourse with on account that of her love and passion for the accused, and not solely on the account of the misrepresentation made to her by the accused. Right. And the court highlighted that the recent judgment in Mahesh Dhamu versus State of Maharashtra, where Supreme Court explicitly stated that in situations where a physical relationship continues for a long period, with the woman's knowledge, it cannot be said with certainty that the relationship was based purely on the alleged promise of marriage here. So what was the court's reasoning here on this particular judgment here? The Delhi High Court observed that the appellant and the prosecutrix had maintained a relationship from March 19 to November 19. During the substantial period, the prosecutrix was aware of the caste differences that posed challenges to their marriage here, right? And critically, the court found that there is no evidence led by the prosecution here to show that appellant did not intend to marry the prosecutrix or refused to marry the prosecutrix here. The court here concluded that both were adults here and they were consenting individuals and established physical relationship between being in love with each other and out of their own free will. The court here specifically held that if there is a physical relationship, consensual physical relationship that continues over a substantial period, it cannot be said that consent was purely based on the promise of marriage, right? And if we talk about here the burden of proof here, the court established a clear standard here. In order to convict a person on false pretext of marriage, there must be clear evidences, clinching evidences that the physical relationship was established only on the basis of promise of marriage, which was never intended to be kept. And in this particular case here, the prosecution failed to prove that clinching evidence here. The first one was that the prosecution failed to prove that the promise was here false from the beginning. The appellant had no intention to marry, that the consent was obtained solely due to this alleged false promise. And the court here noted that prosecutrix herself expressed in the court that she did not want any interference in her life from the appellant now, suggesting her concern was not about a broken promise, but rather about moving forward in life. Right. The judgment here provides an important clarification for the cases involving allegations of rape based on false promises of marriage. It recognized the complex nature of adults' relationship that establishes that in long-term consensual relationship where both the parties are aware of the obstacles to marriage, consent cannot be presumed to be based on solely on the false promise of marriage, right? And that's all in this particular video. Thank you for watching this analysis of this judgment, and feel free to leave any questions in the comments below. We'll try to address them in the future videos. So until next time, stay informed and stay compliant. Thank you.